Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Lisa, I'm telling you, Mom's only coming for a couple days. It's a couple days more than she needs, but when are you two going to stop fighting? You two are impossible to reason with. Alvin, as usual, shook his hands and left the room, which meant that he was not going to discuss anything else today. And his decision regarding his mother's arrival would remain unchanged. We didn't finish the conversation. Lisa was not going to give up so easily. I did. You're both equally dear to me. I don't want to be torn between you trying to reconcile you. Alvin, I spent 5 years honestly trying to please her, being nice, being open, giving her gifts, giving her the granddaughter your mother always dreamed of. And what did I get? Rudeness, insults, tons of dirt behind her back and in her eyes, and the cherry on the cake, a demand for DNA testing to confirm your paternity. Don't you think your mom's a little over the top? Like 1,000 times. The woman was being completely sincere. 5 years ago, she literally agreed to get married after a couple dates. Her husband's family took her coolly. They thought that their son deserved more than a single mother with a child in her arms. They did not take into account such trifles as 2 higher education, a prestigious position before maternity, and the prospect of returning to it with a promotion, reading, high moral principles. In general, in another situation, Lisa wouldn't even look in the direction of Alvin, but fate gave her an extremely poor choice: to marry and bring up her son in a full family, or to become a single mother, behind whose back neighbors whispered without ceasing. Beautiful, intelligent, and self-confident Lisa has always strived to be the best. Studying, sports, dancing, she had no equal in any case she took on. The only area that the girl did not devote time to socializing with the opposite sex, it was as if she did not notice the amorous looks of classmates, trying not to notice or quickly turning the boy into friends. The girl, by the end of school, managed not to spin a single novel. Girlfriends could not understand her, because even the most enviable handsome were rejected. Suitors gradually found more affordable options and disappeared from the horizon. About the reason for this behavior, she did not tell anyone, and she was banal and simple. Her father is an alkie. Daily scandals, parents, obscene appearance and behavior of the father contributed to the fact that the girl decided for herself not to repeat the fate of her mother. No man, no problems, but you can pay attention to your studies, career, self-development. Lisa was the only child in the family, and therefore she had no one to share her worries with. If she had a close friend or an older sister, she would have explained that her father's behavior was not normal, and that there were many worthy men in the world who could create a strong and loving family. Lisa, your number was asked again by that cute new boy from the parallel. Her friends were actively trying to interfere in her personal life. Cute? You saw him? Yeah, shock. Figure, face, dressed in style. But give him your number too. Why are you so lost? You know, I'm not interested. If I didn't know you, I'd have thought you were a girl since kindergarten. Laughed friend. Listen, that's an idea. Why don't you tell all the handsome boys that I'm chasing you? Lisa was fed up with the almost daily suggestions, confessions, and attempts at loneliness on the part of her friends. Let's not do this. Graduation is coming up, and I don't need this kind of fame at all. Mary smiled. Even she didn't know why Lisa was so actively avoiding guys. After school, the girl entered 2 prestigious universities at once and was able to combine full-time study in one and part-time in the other. Thus, a few years later, she had a law degree and a translator from English and German, a perfect combination for working abroad. It was moving to another country that was her cherished dream. Thanks to the successful defense of her diploma, she quickly found a good job, which meant traveling abroad and the possibility of transferring to one of the foreign branches. All her plans went nowhere when in one beautiful evening she met him. That day, she was delayed in training, and waiting for public transportation was almost impossible. When she saw an expensive foreign car pull up to the stop, the girl was a little frightened. However, a tall, athletic, and very handsome young man got out of the car and offered to give her a ride home. Naturally, she politely refused. Then he drove the car to the parking lot and went to walk her home. During the hour they spent on the road, they had time to talk about everything. It turned out that they had a lot in common: favorite books, music, passion for sports. The young man impressed her with his manners. He was well-read, erudite, and attentive. The story began as in a cheap novel. Beautiful courtship, expensive gifts, talking until morning. Brian was amazing, the likes of which she had never met. Most importantly, he was the complete opposite of her father, who was for the girl a model of what a man should not be under any circumstances. No wonder the girl fell in love. The feelings that she finally allowed to take possession of her heart were so beautiful, new, and exciting that she was ready to do anything for the sake of her beloved. All the power of the first crush she put into this relationship. Even her colleagues, with whom she kept a strictly professional relationship, began to notice the change in her. "Lisa, you're especially mysterious today. Has our modest girl fallen in love?" The secretary of the boss did not hide her delight at the changes that had taken place in the girl. The new girl was well received at work, seeing how hard she was working. Unfortunately, behind the veil of love, she did not notice the obvious. The young man never spent holidays together, tried not to appear with her in public places, did not introduce her to friends, and was almost always busy at weekends. The more experienced girl guessed the reason for this behavior. For Lisa, the truth was revealed only on the day when she saw 2 stripes on the test in the morning and decided to make her lover happy. "Brian, I have a small, or rather, very big and amazingly beautiful gift for you." Blushing, said the girl, handing the young man a small box tied with a neat golden bow. "Sweetheart." From this word, the girl's legs just shook. "I asked you not to give me gifts. You do not have such financial resources, and it should be a man. This gift is special. I'm sure you will be pleased." However, on the face of her beloved, she read the whole gamut of emotions, among which there was neither joy, nor happiness, nor delight. Favorite features distorted grimace of disgust and anger. He closed the box abruptly and threw it to the ground. "I hope this is a joke. Brian, are you not happy?" The girl was confused and didn't know how she should react. "Are you crazy? Have you tried to think with your head?" "Brian, what are you doing?" "It was unexpected for me too, and it will affect my plans a lot. But this is our child, the fruit of our love. It's the product of your endless stupidity. Do you really think I want it? Or did you do it on purpose to get money out of me?" "Well, the most you can expect is that I'll pay for the termination of your pregnancy. After that, you'll be out of my life and out of my family's life." "Your what?" "My family. You got a hearing problem all of a sudden." Lisa stared at this rude, cold, selfish man and couldn't believe she was looking at the same perfect, loving, gentle, generous Brian she'd been dating for almost 6 months. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on. Are you so stupid you didn't realize I'm married?" "I'm not gonna leave my wife for you in this." The man nodded squeamishly toward the girl's belly. "I'm not going to terminate the pregnancy. I was diagnosed with serious problems in high school. It is contraindicated for me." The girl spoke in a colorless voice, as if she had been drained of all her life force. Come on, people like you give birth like cats. Seeing how the girl was confused, not knowing what to say. Apparently, she wasn't lying about her health, he said a little softened. I'll pay you the best clinic. Everything will be done as correctly and accurately as possible. It will not affect your health. You will have time to have more children, but this child should not be born. I don't need these problems. My father-in-law is a very powerful man. If he finds out I've been horny with his daughter, it'll be both you and me. It seemed that he still had some feelings for the girl. His tone became so official, as if he was selling a car in an elite salon. No need, I'm not going to demand anything from you. Goodbye. Lisa abruptly turned around and walked towards the bus stop. Her condition after what she had heard did not even allow her to cry. Brian was not going to leave the last word to her. He caught up with her, grabbed her arm roughly and turned her around. You don't seem to understand what I said. You're not having this baby. What are you going to raise it on? You just got your degree a couple months ago. No place to live, no savings. You're gonna live on welfare. Where are you gonna live with him? With a drunk daddy? A girl confided in her lover her deepest secret, the tragedy of their life for her father. Brian, I won't change my mind. If you don't want the baby, I'm not forcing it on you. Let me through, I'm late. Your son's gonna grow up to be a juvenile delinquent. He'll hate you for the life you'll give him. The man was ready to tear her apart, still holding her hand. The girl had serious concerns that he wanted to push her down the stairs. It could be the girl. Lisa suddenly realized that all the feelings she had for this man had evaporated, burst like a soap bubble. If you are so frightened by my precarious financial situation, I am ready to make a bilateral agreement that I will not declare you the father and demand money. A strange premonition told Lisa to protect herself and the future child. And on the other hand, what are my responsibilities? I could hear the interest in the man's voice. And on the other hand, you will never appear in our lives and will not claim to communicate with the child. Are you out of your mind? What do I want with this degenerate? So it's decided. Let's go. No, I'll draw up the contract myself, and we'll get it signed tomorrow. I'm afraid my expertise in this matter won't be enough for you. I'll pick you up at 10 o'clock. They were practically enemies when they parted. She'd never been so devastated in her life. The remnants of her faith in men and their decency had burned away, leaving a disgusting residue on her soul. All men are the same after all, unreliable, irresponsible liars. The next day, they signed an agreement and parted for good. At least that's what Lisa hoped for with all her soul. It was painful and hurtful to become a single mother, but deep down, the girl had no regrets. She never wanted to get married, but she had always dreamed of becoming a mother. She was the only child in the family. Her mother decided not to have more children when her father started drinking. The girl always envied her friends who had brothers and sisters, especially the younger ones. She liked to take care of them, and now she was going to have a child of her own. Lisa realized that it would be very difficult for her, but she did not dare to terminate the pregnancy. The risk was too great that this child was her only chance for motherhood. The doctor who monitored her pregnancy supported her in her decision to keep the baby, no matter what. You know, nowadays so many women are treated for infertility. Someone in their youth was seriously ill. Someone had an abortion. Someone seems to be healthy, but there are no children. You can find a man with a child, but infertility, few people will be happy. Besides, such an obstruction as you have very often passes after childbirth. The body recovers, don't worry. You're smart, grown up, with education and a job. Some people give birth in worse conditions and do not worry. Besides, there are measures to support single mothers. You can even live with your child for a while in a special hostel. Some girls live there for quite a long time, find a job, look after each other's children. I have a place to live and a job. Besides, I can come back after my maternity leave. I hope I can. But even more so, you doubt it. But if you come up with an idea, you don't have more than 2 weeks. I'm not second-guessing my decision. A child doesn't ask its parents to show up. If they don't have the brains to take action and not get pregnant, you can't blame it on the baby. Lisa was glad to have someone to support her. The second person was the mom. She was worried about her daughter's future, but tried not to show it. She promised to support her in any decision she made. She was able to explain to the boss that she was ready to work remotely, if possible, and to go half a day after the birth of the child. She was met and guaranteed to keep her place. The boss did not plan to lose the promising girl so easily. 7 months later, she went on maternity leave, and after another month on Christmas night, the biggest gift and the most long-awaited person, her son, was born. As she feared, his father did not take the news of his grandson well. While she worked, rented a room, and rarely came home, he limited himself to insults and taunts. Well, our perfect you brought in the hem after all? Who knocked you up? Did you pay off your boss for the position? Or did you find someone easier? Lisa tried not to listen to the nasty things her father was always generous with. It seemed that his supply of nasty things was simply inexhaustible. When the young woman came home from the maternity hospital with her son, the real nightmare began. The drunken man organized daily scandals, demanded that she and the child get out of his house. Even periodic visits from the police had no effect. After 6 months of such a life, the woman firmly decided to leave the parental home. Without income and with a child in her arms, it was problematic, so her mother offered her a logical at that time to marry. This option seemed to her the only possible, so she would get the status of a married woman. Behind the back would stop whispering neighbors, and the child would have a full family, but these reasons were just a cover. In reality, Lisa was exhausted mentally and physically. She simply could not find the strength to think of any other way out of the situation. Sitting in the kitchen one evening, they decided that they should choose the quietest, calmest, and non-drinker. So there was at least some hope that the husband will not become a copy of his father. She chose the most deserving one, in her opinion. Alvin lived in a neighboring district, worked as an automobile mechanic. Having finished 11 grades, he went to the army, and after it, he worked for several years for himself, often changing jobs. He didn't grab stars from the sky, Lisa's mother often said. Most importantly, he got along well with little Thomas, who wouldn't go into the arms of anyone but his mother and grandmother. Alvin was ready to get married. He was not embarrassed by the child, so they did not delay the wedding. After a modest wedding, the young family moved into Alvin's apartment, which had been given to them by their grandmother when they were still at school. It was unusual for a woman to wake up and fall asleep without screams and insults from her father. The husband was indeed calm, but a little jealous. She attributed this to insecurity. With the son, the husband got along with her, treated her with care and reverence. The woman simply did not believe her own happiness. The only thing that alarmed the young woman, the mother of the future spouse. She did not hide her contemptuous attitude to the young woman, despite the fact that she was not a peer, was rather her son than a newfound daughter-in-law. The woman thought that this person had rounded up her son and forced him to marry her. After the wedding, she came to the apartment to the newlyweds and made an ugly scandal with insults and breaking dishes. The husband did not stand up for Lisa, justifying his mother's behavior by the fact that she was always jealous of him with girls. Such behavior became the norm in their relationship. Calm, attentive in ordinary days, next to his mother, her husband changed dramatically. She made him dance to her tune, which is why she decided to minimize communication with her husband's relatives. Neither she nor her son went to any of their family celebrations. The situation may have changed when Lisa and Alvin had a daughter. They came to her parents' house to introduce their granddaughter. The new grandmother didn't last long. "She's not like us. She took one of her kids on my son. Now she's taking the other one for a walk. Alvin, aren't you going to object?" "Mom, stop it. They're my kids, and don't insult me and my wife with that kind of innuendo." It was obvious that the man was reluctant to intervene. Ever since he was a child, he had been trained not to cross his mother. God gave him a daughter-in-law who was a whore. What about our eldest daughter-in-law, smart, beautiful with education, live abroad, prestigious work, and the hem of the husband do not bring unclear whose children? The last statement overflowed the cup of Lisa's patience. She gathered the children and left the apartment of her husband's parents with the firm intention of never seeing these people again. 3 years have passed since then. The children went to kindergarten, and the woman was able to go to work. Fortunately, 2 red diplomas and excellent knowledge had had the desired effect. She no longer tried to make contact with her spouse's relatives. Alvin traveled alone to visit them. Not long ago, his older brother and his spouse returned. At one time, they did not stop by until attending Alvin and Lisa's wedding. Neither made any attempt to socialize, or at least get acquainted, after their return. A year later, after the birth of their daughter, Lisa's father passed away, and her mother finally had the opportunity to live for herself. Repeated attempts to divorce her drinking husband ended in beatings and harassment. Once, her father almost burned down the apartment where Mom lived after she left him. After that, she gave up all attempts to leave, trying to simply survive. Lisa supported Mom financially, and in turn, she helped a lot with the grandchildren. The children did not know that in addition to their beloved grandmother, they had another grandmother, grandfather, and uncle. There were periodic conflicts in the family. The husband was jealous of the woman's colleagues, believing that she went to work only to find a lover. The woman knew where these accusations were coming from, but tried to smooth over the conflicts. Within a year, she was able to move up the career ladder significantly, thanks to persistence, diligence, and a huge amount of knowledge. However, her husband's mother had her own version of the fast promotion. "Son, you should be more careful in the doors. Horns will spoil them for us." Jokes of this kind became the norm in communication with Alvin. "Mom, I told you before, I don't like that kind of innuendo." "What hints? I'm telling you plainly, your wife is sleeping with the right people, so she went up the career ladder." "Mom, think about what you're saying." "She has 2 higher education. She sat every day over the textbooks, so that in the maternity do not forget all that she learned. In addition, she additionally works at home, writes thesis coursework for students. I earn several times less than her. Gifts for the holidays, by the way, she also bought. So let her choke on them. I don't need anything from her." The woman defiantly threw in the trash an expensive hair dryer and razor, which her son brought them as a gift for their wedding anniversary. "Mom, by the way, these are not cheap things. They cost as much as my monthly paycheck. If you don't want to use it, give it to someone else. After all, take pity on your father. He doesn't see his grandchildren because of your feud. It's a great misfortune not to see other people's children. There's a whole brood of kids in the sandbox outside. You can pick anyone and sit and admire them." Sometimes Alvin looked at his mother and did not understand how it was possible to be such a disgusting person, and how all these years his father endures such a woman beside him. Mother, I forbid you even to hint that Betty is not my daughter. In your own house you will forbid it, but here I am the mistress. You're afraid to say a word in your own house. You're afraid to show your horns. You know, Mom, I learned that from my father. He's been afraid to say a word against you all his life. You see, this snake wants to break us up on purpose so that you stop communicating with your parents and family. She's setting you against us, you Megara. She's forgotten about you. She only buys presents on holidays. She's trying. She needs you. My brother arrived 2 months ago. Have you ever seen him? No, because that bastard doesn't allow it. She fooled you around and is happy that she took you away from your family. Mom, Alvin sat down in the chair tiredly. Brian doesn't want to see me, and I've tried several times. He always has reasons to refuse to see me because he has no time, or his wife has other plans, or they have another examination. I don't understand why they came back at all, as if they couldn't find suitable doctors abroad. Stop saying that. Kathy's trying to give us an heir. She's healing. She's not giving up hope. Not like your rat, who's had babies from who knows who. The marriage was unequal, but the bride's father saw potential in his son-in-law. A year after the wedding, the young family moved to live abroad. Their capable Brian headed a branch of his father-in-law's firm, ideal in every respect family life, marred only by the lack of children. The young wife was treated in the most famous clinics, passing endless examinations. The husband only once allowed himself to be examined, motivated by the fact that he has in this regard, everything is fine. The second son, Alvin, the mother did not particularly complain. He grew up disobedient, brawling, and mischievous. He found it difficult to study, and in his spare time he preferred to chase pigeons in the yard rather than sit over books. Completely uninterested in anything, he barely finished school. His parents and brother tried to influence him, but it had no effect. His mother did not consider her youngest son worthy of her attention, so she was rather cool to his idea to get married. Everything changed when she personally met the future younger daughter-in-law. At the time when the brother got married and moved abroad, Alvin was serving in the army. It appeared that the brothers had not seen each other for many years, and on Brian's part, there was no effort to remedy this. The favorite son was a frequent guest at his parents' house, but never crossed paths with his younger brother. Whenever Alvin warned that he was going to visit them, the older brother would find 1,000 reasons to postpone the visit. The younger brother was hurt by this neglect, but there was nothing he could do about it. One day the father quietly said that the eldest son and the mother had some secrets, and they concerned the Alvin family. Son, be careful with Lisa. This couple is up to something bad. And now, quite unexpectedly, Alvin's mother decided to change her long-standing anger into mercy and come to visit her youngest son, and not just to come, but to stay overnight. She hadn't planned to ask her daughter-in-law's permission, even her son. Rather than warn her, she had put her in front of the fact. After his father's warning, Alvin was wary of his mother's initiative. However, the most difficult thing was to convince her spouse to accept such an unpleasant relative at home. Lisa, I told you, Mom's only coming for a couple of days. That's a couple days more than she needs. But when are you two going to stop feuding? You're both impossible to reason with. No one's ever tried to reason with me. For years I've been listening to a torrent of filth about my infidelity, about leaving you horns, giving birth to Betty from who knows who, giving you a son. By the way, you knew I had a child before we were married, and it didn't bother you. If it was so important to you, why didn't you tell me before the wedding? Because I've loved him from day one like he was my own. They are equally dear to me, and people around me say that he looks like me. Lisa was tempted to stay overnight at her mother's house, but her hated mother-in-law might take this as cowardice, and she had never been a coward. Therefore, after sitting at work for as long as possible, having done all the accumulated work, she slowly went home by the farthest road. Never in her life had she felt such a heavy reluctance to go home. Usually she hurried from work, anticipating communication with her beloved family. Today she had to endure a serious test, but she was not going to avoid her mother-in-law. Besides, she was on her own turf and could always kick the hated relative out the door. Carefully opening the door, Lisa entered the apartment. It was quiet. She even thought that the mother-in-law changed her mind and did not go to them. However, after a minute, the woman heard muffled voices from the living room. Mother and son were talking about something. The woman had not intended to eavesdrop, but as she headed for the bathroom, she heard Alvin's mother say her name and involuntarily listened. I'm telling you, you're Lisa. For once, her mother-in-law called her daughter-in-law by her first name. She got Thomas pregnant with Brian, knowing he was married. She wanted to tear his family apart and marry him off. She demanded money to keep quiet so her wife wouldn't find out, so they wouldn't be at your wedding. I was afraid she was crazy. She'd ruin his life. I saw them several times when she was out with him. That's why I couldn't accept her. I'd almost ruined the family of one son, and I took up the second one. If you had kids of your own, you'd understand. I have kids of my own. One more comment like that, and you're going home. The buses don't run anymore, or are you going to put your own mother out on the street like a dog? However, this time, the woman didn't come to sling mud at her daughter-in-law. She had a plan, and her youngest son needed to be lured into being an ally. And now they're having problems. They can't give birth, so I decided. Why don't you give Thomas and his wife away? He's his son, and you'll still have a girl, or you'll have more. Your girl gives birth on demand, so maybe you'll have one. Mom, stop it. I told you I won't tolerate this attitude. Why didn't you tell me before that Thomas was my nephew? How could you know all these years and not tell me? And how could you think of taking a child away from its mother? Well, that's where you're gonna help us. We need to make you recognized as a bad mother, then it will be possible to conduct a DNA examination, prove paternity, and take away the child. Inadequate fulfillment of parental rights, body lifestyle, your wife fits such a characteristic, and you will testify in court later, beat him, snapped at everyone, did not take care of the children. I'll tell you how and what to say. Lisa is a wonderful mother. Anybody can tell you that. A great mom who left the kids to grandma. As you can see, I'm well informed. Is that why my brother didn't want to see me? Alvin tried to change the subject. Why would he want to see you? You were never friends. You were no match for him. What would you talk about? And your Viper could have seen him. They have a perfect family. Only a child is missing. And here is a ready grown-up boy. No need to wash diapers. No need to spoil his figure with freaks. Alvin listened to his mother and could not believe his own ears. She was talking about the fate of her grandson, as if he was an unimportant thing. Mom, aren't you curious about this? I guess me, Lisa. Thomas? Who's gonna ask you? The boy's got a chance to grow up in a normal family with money and opportunities, and what are you going to give him? Your stupid swimming and sculpting lessons? Don't make me laugh. You should be grateful that your brother is doing you such a favor. But let's say you don't care about our feelings. What about Brian's wife? Kathy, would you mind bringing up the child her ideal husband's mistress gave birth to? If I'm counting correctly, he started dating Lisa literally months after the wedding. I doubt she's his only one, and she didn't know Thomas' father was married. She told me their story and how scrumptious her brother was when he sent her for an abortion. He didn't want a son then. Has he changed his mind now? I didn't know. That sneaky bitch, setting it up on purpose. Lisa stood outside the door and couldn't believe what she was hearing. The whole story was like the plot of a lowbrow movie. To give birth to one brother and marry another, how small the world was and how different the brothers were. She had never imagined that the perfect Brian, her husband's older brother, the one her mother-in-law had told her so much about, and who had never condescended to meet in person, would turn out to be the Brian she had fallen in love with all those years ago. The one she'd idealized so much and who'd done such a disgusting thing to her. She'd stopped thinking about him a long time ago. After all, if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have a son, and for that alone he could be forgiven and forgotten. And now her mother-in-law had a nightmarish and disgusting plan that could ruin her family, her life. She knew Brian's capabilities. It would cost him nothing to bribe anyone and get all the necessary certificates to take her son away. There was a faint hope for the contract he'd signed when he'd learned of the pregnancy. But for a man like that, a piece of paper was hardly an obstacle. Lisa pressed her hands to her temples, the blood in her veins pulsing so hard that it seemed that the thin vessels were about to burst. Now it was becoming clear, and the reason for such a strong hatred, mother-in-law to Lisa. The old Megara was afraid that her perfect son would be thrown out by his new rich relatives. For years she had scoffed, claiming that Lisa's daughter had strayed, even though it turned out that both her children, the birth grandchildren to this soulless woman. What kind of monster was now sitting in her living room? It had been hidden from her for years that the man she had loved, who had betrayed her and whom she tried not to remember, was a close relative of her husband. It was good to know that her husband was also uninvolved in the secret. It seemed that the mother-in-law and her favorite son-in-law were keeping this information for a rainy day. But how did they even come to this, to take Thomas away from her? Lisa had never doubted that her mother-in-law was completely devoid of human feelings, but she had tried not to think about Brian for many years and had not expected such a move from him. During their last meeting, when they had made a contract, he had not expressed a desire for further communication. Perhaps the idea of a child came into the mother-in-law's head because Brian and his wife had not been able to have a child of their own for many years. Perhaps the mother-in-law wanted to preserve their family, but not to let in a stranger child from the orphanage. However, the scariest thing was that the woman decided to slander her daughter-in-law, collect certificates about her incapacity, and take away the child. Apparently, the mother-in-law did not think about the fact that she would destroy the family of her youngest son. The main thing for her has always been the eldest. Alvin grew like a field of grass. His birth was not planned, and the mother did not even try to hide from her son that she had made many attempts to get rid of the unwanted pregnancy, and now she was trying to destroy her son's family. In any case, it was impossible to justify such a heinous act, and Lisa decided to stop her mother-in-law from talking to Alvin. She entered the room at the very moment when her husband was running out of arguments and wanted to just kick his mother out the door. During the years of his marriage to Lisa, he had grown so tired of his mother's constant attacks on his family that he was ready to break off the relationship, and the monstrous proposal she had made to him was impossible not to understand, not to forgive. Alvin and his mother turned towards her at the same time. It seemed to Lisa that there was a flicker of relief in her husband's eyes. He would no longer have to fight off his mother alone. "Get out, and don't come near my house and my family again, or I'll tear you to pieces. Even if I go to jail, I'll go out and live in a beautiful world that will be free from such a vile viper like you." Lisa grabbed her mother-in-law by the elbow and finally gave Will, accumulated for many years of resentment and rage. "Let me go. Alvin, get that crazy woman out of here. Mom, it's your own fault. She didn't do anything to you." This is the first time a husband has ever openly stood up to Lisa and gone against his mother. "I'll wipe you both out. You'll have no children at all. I'll put you out of work, out of money, and out of a place to live." The woman shrieked like a mad woman, cursing her son and his wife. Lisa, almost by the scruff of the neck, dragged her husband's mother to the staircase landing, not paying attention to the screams and curses that she kept on hurling, slammed the door. The woman slid down on the floor on the wall without strength and burst into tears. There was a lot of grief and hatred in her life, but she certainly did not deserve such an attitude from her mother-in-law, and now she was crying from helplessness, realizing that such a vile woman would not leave them alone. The husband stood in the middle of the hallway, not knowing how to act, to calm his wife or rush to bring his mother, whose screams were heard throughout the entrance. Neighbors had already begun to respond to the lamentations and requests for help. It was heard that the woman was approached with an offer of help. This half-witted smashed my head, broke my arm, insulted me with the last words, "I'm barely alive." I got away from them. Kind people, call an ambulance and the police. This can't be left like this. After these words, Lisa raised her crying face to her husband and said, "It's time for you to choose. Either you protect the family and now somehow influence your mother, or you stay with her on her side and now leave for good. I don't intend to put up with this anymore. I will file a police report on her tomorrow, and believe me, I will point out everything there, the insults, the slander, and the attempts to take the child away." Alvin could not believe that his own mother could do such a despicable thing to his family. He always felt and knew he was not a favorite child. A disappointment, that's what his mother had always called him. Against his successful, intelligent, driven brother, he was always an annoyance. It's a tough family. Sighed his mother in response to the teacher's complaints about the teenager's poor academic performance and bad behavior. He wanted so much to make her proud of him. He'd chosen the most beautiful and intelligent woman to marry, hoping her mother would appreciate it, but she'd hated Lisa as if she'd done something nasty to her, and today he'd learned the reason for that attitude. He did not understand how his mother could think of such a thing. He had loved little Thomas from the first day and could not imagine his life without him. Without considering his opinion, his mother decided to help preserve the family of the eldest son by destroying the family happiness of the youngest. It seemed that at this moment in Alvin's soul, everything he had spent many years creating crumbled. He was about to lose half of his family, and he really couldn't decide which half to choose. He was afraid to even imagine life without his wife, daughter, son, who also turned out to be his own nephew. But it was also scary to cut all ties with his parents and brother. Most of all, he felt sorry for his father, whose mother had definitely forbidden any contact with him. Sighing, Alvin went to the landing, grabbed his mother under her arm, and dragged her forcefully toward the exit. Once outside, he threw her on a bench and let the emotions that had built up in him over the years come out. "Mom, I'm warning you for the last time. Leave my family alone. If you do 1/10 of what you've planned, I swear to you, you and Brian are going to wish you hadn't thought of this in the first place. I will wipe you out. Believe me, I have ample opportunity to remind you that my wife is a successful lawyer, and how many people I have in my car repair shop, you have never dreamed. You could be sure that I will involve them all, and the wife of my brother. It is high time to learn about his crystal integrity, although perhaps let her father first learn about it. He's not the last man in town, so let him influence his son-in-law. Maybe his daughter's horns will stop growing so fast. You wouldn't dare. Mother hissed. "Who do you think you are? You're nothing compared to your brother, a loser, a failure, a nothing, an empty space. And yet this nothing will defend his family. Thomas is my son. I've been planning to adopt him for a long time. Now I'm going to adopt him. We have a full, happy family. I told you not to do it." The woman didn't even seem to think that her spineless youngest son would dare to disobey. "You won't believe it. I'm not going to listen to you," Alvin said with a laugh. He felt that he had been silent for years, and now he had a voice. He wanted to say everything. "The DNA will show that Brian is his father anyway." "Yeah, and it'll also show that we're related to him. Plus, Lisa has a pledge signed by your eldest that he has no claim to her child." "Don't tell me you didn't know that." "I did, but that stupid girl drew it up herself. I'll never believe it's even valid. It's notarized, so your favorite son has no rights to Thomas. I'm still gonna get him taken away from you. They want the baby." And then Alvin finally realized that the whole baby plan was the mother's idea. Brian may not have been aware of it at all. It was obvious that his family was in big trouble, and his mother couldn't miss such a fat lot. "Mom, do they even want him? Have you asked their opinion?" Brian knows he's not very excited about the prospect. He doesn't want kids, but his wife has started the adoption papers. Thomas is perfect for them. He's not some homeless kid with alcoholic genes. Your Lisa isn't the best choice either, but it's a choice. Alvin was so horrified by what he heard that he sat down on the bench with his arms around his head. "Mom, can you hear yourself? People are not puppets. You can't control the fate of living people like that. Thomas is just a child. Have you thought about him? He has loving parents. You want to take him away from us? Put him through a lot of stress. Then you're going to give him away to people who don't really want him. I'm not talking about you destroying our family, breaking the law dozens of times and wasting a lot of money and nerves. Is it really worth it? Let your brother and his wife take a child from an orphanage. Their children live for years without parental affection and love, but be happy that at least one will break out of this system and get into a family. I didn't breed these puppies to regret and bring them up. You were enough for me, although I probably should have put you in a shelter too. Maybe they would have made a human out of you." For the first time in his life, Alvin realized how much of a monster his mother was, indifferent, cynical, and mean, and he was still trying to get his wife to get in touch with her. He should have broken off the relationship long ago, but he hoped in his heart that she would love him and be proud of him. When Betty was born, he had hoped that the arrival of a little granddaughter would soften the grandmother's heart. How wrong he had been. Her suspicions that Lisa had fattened up her daughter were only a screen. In fact, his mother was simply impossible to please, except for the adored eldest son. She loved no one and never loved. "Mom, I don't want to discuss this with you anymore, but I'm warning you, if you mess with my family, hold on, I'll forget that you and I are related. My son and my daughter are more related to me, and I will protect them from you in every way I can." The man went home with his head down. He could not believe that from this day begins one of the most difficult periods in his life. He had no doubt that his mother would not rest. He had to prepare, to think about every little detail. He and Lisa needed to build a strong wall to defend themselves against an enemy like his mother. When he entered the apartment, his wife was still sitting on the floor in front of the door, devastated, unable to cry. Alvin picked her up and helped her to the couch to comfort her. He rocked her in his arms for a long time like a small child until she fell asleep. In that moment, he decided that he would protect this woman from any evil, even if it came in the form of his own mother. Brian had been in a bad mood since the morning. Things were not going well at work, and his father-in-law considered him to be the one to blame. For several years, the man had been trying to get out of his skin to prove that he was not just the husband of the daughter of the head of the company, but also an excellent specialist. In addition, it was necessary to maintain the image of an ideal family man, and in a marriage of convenience, it becomes difficult, if not unbearable, even in the first years of marriage. And his wife, with her fantasies and unrealizable ideas, decided to become a volunteer. Not enough headaches for him and his mother, but this. He quickly realized that the only way to get anywhere in this life was to go around. Flattery and family ties were a pretty good option. When Brian learned that the CEO had a daughter, he quickly figured out the surest way to the top managers of the company. Pretty but shallow Kathy quickly fell for a beautiful courtship from Daddy's subordinate at one of the corporate events. Brian knew how to please a woman and successfully went to fulfill the plan. After a month, spoiled girl was ready, as they say, to eat out of his hands, and after another month, Brian and Kathy married. To consolidate the success of the young man, put up a lot of work to show the future father-in-law that he is worthy of becoming a member of the family. However, the new relative was in no hurry to entrust his son-in-law with any important position. The spectacular and well-groomed woman had only one flaw, which annoyed Brian terribly. She very much wanted to have children, and despite all her efforts, it was this whim she could not fulfill. "Darling, you're still so young. Why would you want to ruin your figure by getting pregnant at your age? Let me buy you some fancy dog or some other stylish animal, and you will take care of it. And the baby, it's screaming snot. Why would you do that? Hire a trendy nanny? No nannies. I'm gonna raise our child myself. In case you forgot, I'm a certified child psychologist. I know how much that degree cost your dad." Brian thought to himself, but he said out loud, "I don't doubt your pedagogical talent, but I think that we can have children later, by 35, 40 years. Are you crazy? The older the mother, the more likely she is to give birth to an abnormal child. Are you ready to take on the responsibility of having a child like that?" I wasn't planning on taking responsibility for the baby at all. The young husband thought, but out loud he said, "Honey, we can't have a sick child. We are both healthy and carefully monitor our condition." Since the day of the gorgeous wedding, only about a year had passed, and the young husband had already been seen in the company of a spectacular beauty, then another and another. While Kathy underwent one examination after another, her loving husband actively built up her horns. Finally, patience broke, and he sent the young family abroad. The motivation was more than worthy. Examinations with the best specialists, and Brian offered to head one of the European offices. The position he dreamed of so much, in fact, turned out to be a sham. The head did not have the right to vote, could not sign documents, and on all important issues was obliged to consult with his deputy, in fact, the head of the office. The young woman's father could easily destroy his son-in-law, tell his daughter about all his connections on the side. However, he raised her alone. His wife passed away when little Kathy was not even 3 years old. In an attempt to replace mom and dad, the man tried to shield his beloved child from all the misfortunes, to inform her that her hotly beloved husband does not love her and married her for the sake of calculation. The father did not have the strength and spirit. As soon as the hot blood of the ambitious young chief stirred, and he demanded an extension of authority, he was provided with proof of his dissolute metropolitan life. Recognize it. There are at least 5 different girls here, 2 of whom are not socially responsible. Do you think your wife will appreciate this footage? I can prove it's a photo montage, and she can't leave me. Brian tried to be brave, but the shock of seeing the photo would be remembered for a long time. He could lose everything he had worked so hard for. Once subdued, Brian, even for a while, was deliberately attentive and kind to his wife, together with her, visiting endless examinations and taking a lot of tests. This strong desire of his wife to give birth to a child terribly annoyed Brian, who did not plan to burden his own life with such a nuisance. Screaming, stupid, always demanding attention to themselves creatures did not cause him a bit of tenderness or sympathy. He didn't plan to disrupt his life by having a child. Besides, he was not at all concerned about the proverbial glass of water in his old age. During his life, he planned to earn good money so that it would be enough for the glass and for a nurse who would bring it. And in general, he did not plan so far ahead. Everything in his life he managed without much difficulty. From childhood, he was accustomed to the fact that his appearance was already a happiness and a holiday. His mother was very fond of him. And with the appearance of her second son, she had a daily reason to praise one and humiliate the other. In time, Brian began to treat his brother as a servant. Limited and simple-minded Alvin was a toy in the hands of his brother, and his mother never tired to support Brian in his desire for wealth and luxury. And the other day, his mother shocked him with a completely unbelievable news. It turns out that she has figured out how to solve their problem with Kathy. At the moment when his mother solemnly announced her plan, Brian thought that she was completely out of her mind. Turns out one of his exes had a baby. He remembered that he had sent some knave fool to terminate the pregnancy, but she refused, and now the mother had decided to take the child away so that she and Kathy could adopt it. His lovely wife shared with her mother-in-law her desire to adopt the child. Then the mother very aptly remembered that 5 years ago, her son had shared a problem with her. A pregnant girlfriend had decided to give birth. Apparently, the mother followed that girlfriend, but Brian then began to have problems. His father-in-law exiled him and his wife abroad. They didn't come home even for his younger brother's wedding. His mother had talked them out of it then, saying the wedding wasn't worth their attention. So his mother decided to finish him off with some positive news. "Son, I haven't told you everything. You can adopt not some stranger's kid with strange genetics, but your own son. Are you all right in the head?" My son's voice became hard and rough. "You misunderstand me. I'm talking about the child that girl gave birth to with you. Remember you told me before you left that some girl was expecting a child from you and refused the money you gave her to get rid of it. And what? You're in touch with her. I would like not to communicate, but I can't." The woman exclaimed with hatred, "That sneaky little bitch is married to your brother. Are you kidding me? How is that possible? If I knew he seemed to run after her in his high school years, that he was in the army, and then they met again somewhere, and he continued to court her. She didn't really notice him in high school, but after she had a baby, I guess she wasn't so picky. The wedding was arranged quickly. She rather gave birth to his daughter, so that he did not run away." Enough of my brother's entertaining story of marital happiness. Let's get to the point. Well, they're raising your son now, and Alvin didn't even know Thomas was his nephew. I'm sure his wife didn't realize it either, because you two don't look anything alike, and the same last name didn't surprise her. I knew she had no brains even then. I think her dad was a drunk. Or it wasn't her. She married the first guy she saw so she could leave home with her fetus, and her father died a long time ago. Why are you telling me all this? Because your brother and his whore have another child. The older one can be taken away, and you and Kathy can adopt him. Mom, you make it sound like he's a kitten. Besides, why would I need such proof of my infidelity? My father-in-law would kill me. I'll help you. We'll take him away from them, put him in an orphanage, and from there you and your wife will take him and go abroad again." The mother was glowing with pride. It seemed to her that her plan was perfect because she tried so hard. All the effort she put into making her favorite son was happy. That day he was able to convince his mother that the idea was as stupid as possible. In no case should not allow his wife to know that he went from her to the left. She naively believed him and thought that he sincerely loved her. It seemed that the mother calmed down for a while, but it was enough for only a week. As it turned out, all this time she spent on running around the organizations. In the competition, she's always so sweet and kind. Would those who knew her hear you? Brian muttered, "Did you say something?" "Nothing, except that you look stunning tonight. You flatter her." Although the man did not have any tender and romantic feelings for his wife, he managed to imitate them skillfully, so that the wife lived in the happy certainty that she got the most loving, gentle, and attentive husband. For complete happiness, she lacked only a child. All doctors in one voice said that she is absolutely healthy and there are no contraindications for conception. It turned out that the husband had problems. However, after a year of infertile attempts, even he gave up and underwent a full examination. He, too, had nothing wrong with his health. The doctor said it happens. You just have to wait, distract yourself, and relax. Kathy couldn't relax. The baby gradually became an obsession. One day, scrolling through social networks, she came across a group in which adoptive parents shared details of their new life, a life in which there was a place for someone else's child, who became their own. In photos and videos, the frozen, withdrawn, emotionless babies gradually thawed, blossomed, began to smile, and became ordinary in life joyful kids. That day, she wasn't too keen on the idea of adoption because she and her husband were young and healthy. It required a little waiting, as the doctor said, but something kept the woman going to that group every day. She had gotten to know many of the babies and could appreciate their progress. And then one day she heard the story of one of the moms who had been pregnant for a long time, decided to adopt, and in the process of doing the paperwork, found out she was pregnant. Kathy digged through mountains of information regarding this phenomenon because, as it turned out, it was far from uncommon, and she saw this as a way out. Besides 2 children, that's twice the joy. Even if she could not give birth to her own, she would have an adopted baby who would also need a family, care, affection, and support of parents. She decided to share her thoughts with her husband, and he did not appreciate her enthusiasm. If on a blood child he was still ready to agree, then on not native, adopted, he could not decide under any conditions. Unexpectedly sharply, Kathy's father also spoke out on this matter. He also saw it as another whim of his daughter. "Baby, you will play. You will quickly get bored with studying, wasting time on someone else's child. You will not find in him your traits, the traits of a husband. He'll yell, you'll be tired, and eventually you'll want him back. It's not all rosy on this issue. For every happy foster family, there are 5, if not 10 unhappy ones who regret their decision. You're wrong. I'm being realistic. I don't plan on taking in a child with a disability, but that's only for the reason that you all would be against it. My abilities are sufficient for that. Daughter, as a child, you couldn't even take care of a cat properly. Your endless pets we didn't have time to buy. I understand. You want a child, but it's more like a whim that was not fulfilled, and you stubborn. Admit it to yourself. A baby is not a doll or hamster. You can't take it and play with it and put it back in the shelter. I won't allow it. Okay, then I'll volunteer at the orphanage practice. Are you crazy? If you've got nothing better to do, go to work. Do you want me to get you a job at my firm? Dad, I've been working there for a long time. Have you forgotten? That's right. So come out and start your duties. I'll use the money I earned to buy diapers and formula for the kids. Her husband and father, accustomed to see in her only a charming doll, not endowed with a rich intellect, did not expect such persistence. The woman really decided to test her willpower for strength. She found an organization which, on a gratuitous basis, cooperated with the baby house. Volunteers, mostly young boys and girls, not only helped by collecting necessary supplies, food, but also often on duty with the nurses. They helped to bathe and change the babies who were left without their mothers or just carried them in their arms. Kathy decided to come in the evenings and read stories to the babies. Even though they were the youngest babies on the ward, she knew how important this bedtime ritual was. She herself did not remember her mother well, but she remembered well that she read to her every day. One day, on her way back from her new duty, she decided to walk, and on a bench near the house, she saw a woman with her children. A boy and a girl about 5 and 3 years old, so cute and adorable. They were telling their mother about the events that happened to them in kindergarten, and the mother listened to them attentively, asking questions. Kathy was also admiring the picture, stopping nearby. She liked this family so much that she decided to go over and meet them. She didn't usually do that, but here some sort of mental impulse kicked in. "Hello, I couldn't pass by without admiring you. What a beautiful family you are." The children hid behind their mother, unaccustomed to such attention from strangers. "Oh, I frightened you. I'm sorry." "It's okay. They're just very modest." The children's mom was about the same age as Kathy, and I could already have children of that age. Sad, the woman thought and said out loud, "My name is Kathy. I'm a volunteer at the orphanage. I thought I'd take a little walk and I met you. I'm Lisa." "And I'm Thomas." The boy had the courage to introduce himself. Beautiful dark hair, blue-eyed boy reminded her of someone very familiar, but she could not remember who. Having a pretty good memory for faces, the woman didn't remember names, and it always took her a long time to remember how she knew this or that random person. However, now there was a completely different feeling about the boy. She had definitely never met him anywhere, but his features were familiar to her. As she briefly thought about it, a dad approached the family, and Kathy realized who she was reminded of by the little boy. It was Alvin, her husband's brother. She couldn't understand why the brothers had stopped talking years ago. She had never met him in person. When she and Brian had married, Alvin had been in the army, and then they had gone overseas and had only recently returned. In all that time, she had only seen her husband's brother in pictures and knew nothing about his family at all. When she and her husband visited his parents, the topic of her younger brother's family was carefully avoided. What was wrong with them? The woman thought, beautiful, young, friendly family, beautiful children. Why did her mother-in-law, who had always been so kind to her, never mention her grandchildren? Alvin and his wife did not realize who was in front of them. Even if they had seen her in a photo with her husband, they would hardly recognize her now, without makeup and styling, modestly dressed. At that moment, the phone rang, and Kathy waved goodbye to her new acquaintances. She stepped back to the playground. It was her husband. "Baby, where have you been?" "You're not picking up. I'm worried. Is something wrong?" "I turned off my phone while I was putting the kids to bed. Nothing happened." "Listen, where are you now?" "I'm at work." "I'm gonna be late today. What are your plans for me?" My husband's voice has become quieter and more mysterious. "Yes, I was going to ask you to go out tonight." "Yes," disappointedly stretched the husband. "And I was hoping to spend time alone. Who are you going to see?" "Do I know them?" "I think you do." It's your brother's family." No, Brian didn't have time to think before he blurted out the answer. "Why not?" Kathy was embarrassed by such a quick and abrupt answer. "I just saw them. They have such adorable kids. The boy looks just like you." "Why would he look like me?" Brian realized that his voice might give him away. It was hysterical. He realized that his wife had found out, and why had she come to the orphanage? It was high time to correct her brains and stop this circus with adoption. He did not need children, neither his own, nor even strangers. Why should he? You're his own uncle. Brian breathed a sigh of relief. She doesn't know anything. "Did my mother call you today?" He asked cautiously, for fear of hearing that she had already told her daughter-in-law about the wonderful idea of adopting a boy who looked remarkably like Brain. Now that scheme, thankfully, could be forgotten. The wife had seen Thomas, which meant she would guess everything. No, should she? "Why don't we stop by her place tonight?" "It's been a while." Kathy was genuinely surprised at the reluctance of her husband's relatives to socialize. "Listen, I've got a great idea. Let's have a big family dinner tomorrow. Invite Dad, your parents and your brother, and his family. I mean, we've never met them. It's kind of weird, don't you think? You're brothers, but you haven't seen each other in years. Lisa and I met for the first time today, and we've been related for years. I would love to hang out with your nephews. Thomas is a very handsome boy, and his little sister is adorable. I didn't even get a chance to ask her name. Betty. Her mother says she looks nothing like her brother." Brian noted absently, frantically trying to steer his wife's thoughts in another direction and distract her from the wonderful idea of having her mother, father-in-law, and ex-mistress with an illegitimate child at the same table. Even an eel in a hot frying pan would have a better chance of surviving than him. Yeah, she's a carbon copy of Mommy. Lisa, by the way, is a very beautiful young woman. I would never have guessed she'd have such grown-up kids at such a young age. How old is she? Your age? Baby, I missed you so much. Why don't we just spend the evening together? It's been so long since we've been out. You don't want me to meet your relatives?" His wife asked him directly. His mother and his brother's wife have a very strained relationship, and she has never accepted his choice. In addition, the mother is not sure that the daughter to the brother is a relative. Anyway, it's a whole story, and I don't want to involve you and your father in it. He doesn't seem to like me enough as it is. What makes you say that? Dad, on the contrary, is always praising you. But it's one thing to praise you, but it's another to put you in a position of responsibility. You didn't answer, by the way. Where are you coming home? Why do I send a driver to pick you up? Okay, I'm waiting. Kathy replied. Again obeying the momentary impulse, Kathy decided to approach her husband's brother's family one more time and get acquainted. The children were still walking in the playground. The parents were sitting on a bench and discussing something very heatedly. "Coming closer," the woman heard a phrase. "They won't be able to do that. It's not easy to take away a child. Who could think of such a horror, to take children away from their parents?" It flashed through my mind. Hello again. I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. I got distracted by the phone call. Good evening. Alvin and Lisa said the same thing. Not quite sure what this woman wanted from them. I'm Kathy, your brother Brian's wife. The woman decided to introduce herself at once. An equally frightened, angry expression appeared on the couple's faces. They looked at each other and practically said in one voice, "You can't take him away. We won't let you." Then the woman rushed to the playground to get the children, and Alvin turned to the uncomprehending Kathy and repeated, "Thomas, we're not giving him to you. He's our son, no matter what his mother does. I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you talking like that? I'm not going to take anyone away from you. I just recognized you and wanted to invite you to visit, to get to know you. We're close relatives, but we've never met in person, so it's strange to me. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to get to know you. I have no ill intentions, I swear to you. Apparently, the woman spoke very convincingly. Alvin looked at his wife and said, the ingenious plan was apparently hidden from her, and suggested, turning to his brother's wife, come on, we'll tell you why we don't communicate with our parents and brother. Surprisingly, the problems brought Alvin and Lisa closer together. He stopped being jealous of her, and she felt great support from her husband. They were now a real family of friends. The conversation took all evening. While Lisa changed clothes and fed the babies, Alvin and Kathy sat in the kitchen. Then her spouse turned on cartoons and joined them. Kathy was horrified by what she heard. Her whole ideal world turned out to be a jumble of lies. Her husband had been lying to her for years, constantly mentoring the enemy, and her mother-in-law, she didn't even want to think about her. Wow, how lucky she was to be stopping near their house today. Despite the horror of the story, she had no reason not to believe it. There was too much evidence, but what struck her most was her mother-in-law's cynicism. She was going to force Kathy to raise a child who had been born to her husband by his mistress. Under the icing of her and Brian's marital happiness, she was going to hide so many broken destinies. She looked at the children who were watching cartoons passionately. Thomas had her husband's profile, his eyes, his hair, the shape of his head. It was amazing how a child could look like a father who had absolutely no use for him. Several times her husband tried to call her. She dropped the calls, and then she turned off the phone altogether. She didn't want to see or hear from anyone, but it was scary to be alone right now. Then she had an idea. Guys, can I stay at your place tonight? I can't go home and I don't want to go to my dad's. Of course you can stay. You are the only ones who told me the whole truth, and we are not strangers now. We have so many secrets in common. The woman smiled sadly and went out to the balcony. She wanted to breathe a little and put her thoughts in order. At that moment there was a knock on the door, or rather, almost knocked it off its hinges. The knocker seemed determined to kick it down. Alvin looked through the peephole and saw his angry brother on the stairs. He opened the door and stepped out, preventing Brian from entering the apartment. Are you crazy to knock like that? We have little kids sleeping. Where's my wife? Brian was clearly concerned. The driver reported that Kathy wasn't at the address, which meant only one thing: she had gone to talk to his brother. The fact that she hadn't picked up the phone in hours only confirmed the hunch. Brian called her father and a couple of friends just in case. She was nowhere to be found, and no one had seen her. After getting her mother's address from her brother, Brian rushed to get his wife. Realizing that today was most likely the last day of his married life, his career and everything that surrounded him, his apartment, his car, his vacation, he had it all only because of his wife. Strangely, he felt no regret now. Lies like a huge layer of snow pressed on him, not allowing him to live normally. Now it would crumble, and what would be left behind was to be seen. We have her, but you better not see her right now. Does she know everything? What does she know? Everything. My brother just said it, and then he went on. That you've been going out on the road. About Thomas being your son. That Mom decided to take him away from us and give him to you. Why did you tell her that? There was no anger in Brian's voice, just a terrible tiredness. Don't you think she deserved it? She really loves you, and she wanted a child from you, not for her own whims. Why are you doing this to her? Why are you all doing this to her? You know, I too, under my mom's influence, didn't notice how hard it was for Lisa all those years, and she put up with it. Do you know what she's been through? I'm glad my mom came up with that horrible adoption plan. It brought us closer together. If you love your wife, fight for her. Apologize, beg, plead. But if you only want her as a means to an end, don't ever go near her again. She's strong. She'll be hurt, painful, sad, but she'll get through it. How do you know all this? You don't know her. You don't know her. We've learned more in a few hours than you have in 7 years. I want to talk to her. She doesn't want to. She's staying with us tonight. If she's ready tomorrow, I'll call you. Does Thomas really look like me? Yes, but if you try to take him away from me or tell me the truth, I'll wipe you out. From the calm confidence with which his brother said those words, Brian realized his mother's plan was doomed to failure beforehand. His brother had become to the boy the best father imaginable. He even felt a pang of jealousy. His son would grow up in front of him with no way of knowing the truth. We reissued the deed to him. Thomas is my son now. I don't even recommend genetic testing. It won't help you. I was initially against the idea that the mother came up with. She seems to have serious problems with her head. I'd show her to a specialist, then show her. I don't want to cross paths with her anymore. With my father, yes, he was very happy when he visited us the other day. He finally met his grandchildren. But she doesn't exist for us anymore. Lisa, she ruined her life for many years, and I was considered an empty place from birth. We have not lost anything. On the contrary, we have gained. My father dared to go against her. If you want, you can come sometimes, but I warn you, if you make any mention of who you are to Thomas. I'm his uncle, and I'm not going to pretend to be anything more than that. That's fine. Apparently, there really is a freak in the family, and it's obviously not you. For the first time in his life, Brian didn't want to be haughty and arrogant with his brother. He suddenly felt jealous. A loving wife, children, a cozy home, even his wife found shelter and comfort here, and he seemed to be his own brother. There was no place here, too wide. Deep gulfs separated them. I'll try to talk to her. Alvin seemed to read his brother's mind. But you shouldn't see each other right now. You should also think hard today about what to do next. Obviously, it won't be like before, but if you don't need her, and you're with her for the money and her father's opportunity, at least be honest with her. You'll be able to achieve everything in life without her father and position. The last phrase my brother said was more for encouragement, but it was the one that echoed in my head all evening and all night. In the morning, Kathy left for a friend's house in the country, not telling anyone but Alvin and Lisa where she was. Her parents had to work late that day, and the children were to be picked up from daycare by their grandmother. Cheerfully pacing the path, the children and Grandma recalled the day's events, shared news, joked and laughed. The second grandmother grew in their path quite unexpectedly. Roughly grabbing the boy by the hand, she tore him to himself, trying to unhook his other hand from his grandmother. "Come here. So let the boy go. He should be somewhere else by now." The woman didn't look very decent, to say the least. "What are you doing?" "Let Thomas go." Lisa's mother began to look around frantically for help. They were only a few meters away from the entrance. At that moment, she saw a woman sitting on a bench in the playground and decided to call for help. "Help! This is crazy. She wants to take the child away." The woman turned in their direction and, as if recognizing her, quickly ran towards them. However, Alvin's mother, upon seeing the woman, quickly changed her expression. "Kathy, daughter, what are you doing here, my good girl? Brain can't find you for 24 hours. Aunt Kathy, you're back. Stay with us again tonight. It's so much fun with you." Hugging the children, unhooking her mother-in-law's hand from the boy's arm, Kathy turned to her husband's relative. "And she won't. I filed the divorce papers, packed his things, already took them to your apartment. Your husband didn't even bother to ask what the reason was. What papers? Honey, what kind of joke is this? You two love each other so much." "Yes, I did, but your son, the feeling is completely foreign." "You don't have to talk to me. I know everything about Brian having a child." The woman looked expressively at the boy, who stood between the two grandmothers and could not understand what was going on. "And about the rest of his exploits. It's all of them. It's my no-good Alvin and his philandering wife. They're the ones who turned you against me, against Brian. I'll give it to them. I'll have them on their knees." After these words, the woman suddenly made a terrible grimace, clutched to her heart, and fell down. After a heart attack that left the woman bedridden for almost a year, Alvin and Brian's mother never returned home. She was transferred to a specialized facility with signs of mental illness. Amidst the intense stress, the main factor that affected her mental health was the breakup of her eldest son's family. The former daughter-in-law became a friend for the family of the younger one. She continued to help volunteers, worked as a child psychologist. It was this work that gave her everything she had dreamed of: a loving and loving husband and a little daughter.